Hello everyone, this is Adam Elstein. I'm recording a brief tutorial in order to describe the workflow for downloading images from your camera to your computer via Adobe Bridge, with a few tips as to appropriate image management, file naming, etc. Let's get started. The first thing you need to do, of course, is to take the card from your camera and mount it on your computer. I've already done that. The card here is called Untitled. Let's open it up briefly, see what's inside it. You'll notice almost always you'll find a file. The root file will be called DCIM, stands for Digital Camera Imaging. Most cameras create that as the root. Within that there usually be a subfolder which will probably contain the name of your camera. In my case I was using a Fuji camera, an X1 Pro. And if I open that up, you'll notice that there's a whole number of different photographs here. The files have a .raf extension. That is the Fuji proprietary RAW format, which you can see here, Fuji camera RAW file. I'll explain what that is later. And this is the information that I'm going to need to move to my computer. You'll notice that the files here don't have any particular name or date associated with them. So one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to append that. Okay, so let's close out the folder and let's open up Bridge, Adobe Bridge. Adobe Bridge is the tool that we're going to be using for image management. It's very multi-purpose. You can use it for photographs, you can use it for Illustrator files, you can use it for video files. It's a very, very useful tool, so it's well worth learning how to use. In this case we're going to use it for photo downloading. So let's go to File, let's go to Get Photos from Camera, and when you click that, you'll see something called the Photo Downloader. This is the Bridge CF6 Photo Downloader. You may see, I'm going to go down here and click the button Standard Dialog. You may see something that looks like this. You don't see all the photographs, and you may not also reference your card. If you get this, just go down to Advanced Dialog, and if you don't see your card, what you can do basically is go to Get Photos From and navigate, and it will allow you to navigate to where your card is. In my case, it automatically finds the card. Okay, so we have our images. You'll notice here in the left-hand side there's a number of images, and we could very briefly scan through. One of the things that I like to do is to, in order to save room on my computer, is if I see something that's obviously a bad file, like this, I must have been testing my camera in a coffee shop, I will unclick it to be sure that it will not be downloaded. Now, a few other things on the right. This is where we're going to choose where the files go and how they're renamed. Save options. Let's check out our location. You should have a spot on your computer that you designate for photo storage. One of the classic places on a Mac, there's a folder called the Pictures folder, which for this purposes I'm going to say that's where I keep my pictures. I actually create my own location, but that's not so important. Let's click Choose, and it'll say Select Directory to store files. In this case, you know, here I happen to have a photography folder, but we'll use Pictures. If you have a Mac, that will be useful. Otherwise, you can create your own, or on a Windows directory, you can also use the Pictures directory. So we'll say Open. So now we've set our directory path. Now it says Create Subfolders. This is where we can name our folder, and that's actually a very useful thing to do. The last thing you want to have are thousands and thousands of photographs with something that looks like this, _DSF7646, etc., etc., etc. It will make you crazy, and you will never be able to know what you have. What I'm going to recommend is a very, very standard convention for naming your files and your file folders. I actually use this. Let me bring it on from stage right here. This is the convention that I use. I begin every file with the date. And the date convention is year, 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 year. In other words, the full year, no spaces, then MM the month. And if it's a single-digit month, like January, February, you'll start with a 0. Then day, day, underscore, and then the shoot name. The shoot name is something that should remind you of what the shoot was about. It's just to basically tickle your memory, as it were, so that you can basically remember what you've got inside the folder. So as an example, since today happens to be the 28th of October 2013, and I'm recording this tutorial for my Pratt Architectural Imaging class, I've decided to call this 2013-0828 underscore Pratt Arch Image. So this is what we're going to use. Let's set it up. Bring this back off to the right. Let's come to custom name. Well, we'll set up a custom name, and we'll enter the custom name here. And the custom name for the subfolder is what we had here. Sorry, this guy needs to come back for a moment. And I could even be digitally efficient or lazy and copy it and actually paste it. So we're going to call this file, this folder rather, 2013-0828 underscore Pratt Arch Image. Now, that is the folder in which the images are stored. The question is, what do we want to do for the individual files themselves? Well, I recommend using the same convention for renaming the files. So we can rename the files here, and what you need to do is you need to come to this drop-down list. You may have it set as a default, do not rename files. Let's change that. Let's come down to the same convention as I use, shot date, so YYYYYMMDD plus custom name. And all we need to do here is enter our custom name. As a matter of fact, I could even copy and paste it. So let me copy paste it to be efficient stroke lazy. And you will notice once I put this in here, well, what's happening is I'm getting a double date, because in this case the date is actually already appended by the computer itself. It knows the date that the shot was actually made. As a matter of fact, yes, that's confusing. I apologize. It's confusing, and this is a confusion that you run into all the time with photography. What happens if you do a shot on one day and you download it on another day? It's confusing because if you notice here, look at the example. It says 2013-0810, and today's 2013-0828. What that means is it's actually read the files. It's read the date that I created those files, which happened to have been a couple weeks ago, and it's actually using that for the shot date. So what I do in that situation is I say, camera is smarter than me, and I'm not going to re-record this video, so all I will do is come up and change my original date to 2013-0810, and then I'm going to actually just get rid of it there. And so now we look under the example, and it's always good to check the example. 2013-0810, that's the date the images were created. Shot, the shoot sort of tickler, Pratt Arch Imaging, and the actually what this number is this is the number for starting the rename of the files. So what I'm going to do is, if you've downloaded a number of files from the same card, it will sort of increment the number. I'm going to start with 1. You can always start at a different number. Okay, so this is how we're going to basically rename the files. Let's look at a few other options here, just to see what's possible. I'm going to keep Open in Adobe Bridge clicked. That will open up the files in Bridge automatically. Convert to DNG, not something I want to talk about too much right now. There is a archival, supposedly future-proof open standard called DNG, stands for Digital Negative, created by Adobe, that addresses the problem that most camera RAW files are proprietary. So you'll notice here a Fuji file is a .raf file, a Canon file is has a different appendage, a Nikon file has a .nef file, etc., etc. Those are all proprietary, and the fear was that if a camera company went out of business or refused to support a standard, you could have a kind of an orphan image that nobody would be able to open. So they created this standard called DNG, and it is ultimately good practice to convert your images to DNG to future-proof them. I am not going to do that now, and I'm not going to require you to do that within the context of this class, but in the broader scheme of things, it is a good idea. Delete original files. I generally recommend people do not use the computer to delete the original files from their card. The reason is sometimes you make a mistake and I think it is always better to reformat the card in camera. Also, it sometimes when you try to reformat a card on the computer, it creates strange problems. So don't check that. And finally, save copies too. This is another important discussion which I will just touch on briefly now. I am not going to require you to check this box for the moment. However, if you did check this box, what would happen is that your photo downloader program would save copies of the images that you are downloading in two locations. It would save them to the subfolder that you've designated, and it would save them to another subfolder. Now, why would you want to do this? Well, hard drives die. Images can get corrupted, and the key to happiness in the digital realm is archiving and multiple copies. It's considered good practice to always back your images up to a second, and most professionals will actually argue a third location, the third location being off-site to wherever you happen to be working normally. So this is something which is, again, in the grand scheme of things, good practice, but one that I'm not going to do right now or require you to do. One of the things, by the way, that you might want to do, and that I do sometimes depending on the nature of the job, is literally save your copies to a folder which is designated as a Dropbox folder. And then that takes care of your off-site backup, because automatically Dropbox will copy those images. Of course, that's a very potentially dangerous strategy, only in the sense that it will fill your Dropbox up pretty quickly. So anyway, let's uncheck that. Let's look at metadata very quickly. A word, metadata, which means data about data. It has something which, a term that's been in the news lately in another context, but that's not so important. Metadata is information in the context of images about who creates the image. So in this case, I have put my name, Adam Elstein, and I have put copyright information. You'd say, oh, why do I care about this? Well, in this day and age, it is too easy for people to appropriate your images, particularly if there's no information about who created the image. If you care about who uses your image, if you want to be able to track that back, the best thing that you can do is to embed some metadata into the image itself. So it's easy to do. I always do that. All right, now let's press, once we have everything set, just double check. Let's hit the Get Media button and see what happens. So it will copy some files here, and we will wait until it is done. Done. Okay, so what happens? As soon as the photo downloader is finished its business, Adobe Bridge pops open, and you'll notice along the bottom here we have a film strip of images, and if we click on one, you'll notice we have an image, this lovely image of mailboxes in Sag Harbor, New York. This is the beginning of our photo shoot. Let's just check to see what has actually been produced on our computer. So let's just close out of Bridge for a moment. Actually, we can go, well, let's go use Bridge as a browser. We can go into Pictures, and we happen to see that indeed there is a folder that's been created, 20130810 Pratt Arch image. Or I can come back out here quickly, look in my Finder again. So there we go. It's created today, 11:48 a.m. It is now 11:49 a.m. and that is the end of this initial tutorial.